Well, I hope that my English will be good to be understood. So, for my PhD at the University of Rennes, I applied to the megalithic monuments the methodology called building archaeology, used more often on the historical buildings. I did a training course at Lyon under the direction of Isabelle Parron and Émilien Bouticourt. I worked during this course on the Cathedral of Vienne in the department of Isère, which is a dressed stone construction. For the adaptation to the dry stone megalithic walling, some modification must be done as the vocabulary, the understanding of the mode of construction, and we have to improve the knowledge about the raw materials and their extraction, the tools and the techniques used, the management of the building site, etc. This adaptation has been done and is still in progress on the site of the Tumulus of Perret that Luc presented earlier. My subject area is Brittany, and I have chosen for the moment, more particularly, two monuments, Carnes and Barnenez, in the northern part of Finistère. These monuments have been excavated and restored in the 50s, 60s by Pierre Rolangio. Their interests are to have been excavated recently, to offer a good literature, and for Barnenez, a documentation on the restoration. The access to the preserved world is easier thanks to the excavation, restoration, and the organization which manages sites like the CMN for Barnenez. Both are multi-phase cairns which have been seen partly by Pierre Rolangio. For instance, Gio have seen two phases at Barnenez, a primary and secondary cairn. For long cairn like Barnenez, it must have all the phases as a monument included in the long cairn, and it's possible to see the sequences of the construction of each phase by the methodology. The first work was to locate the restored and conserved part on the wall of each monument. We'll take the example of the cairn facade, where all the walls have been studied. In the literature, Gio said that the preserved part reaches a height of 3 meters. It is confirmed with the human scale on the photo of Commandant Devoir, who has visited the monument in the 20s. And it's the opposite side that we can see here. As you can see on this image, the upper half have been totally added by the restoration team on the original monuments. Donc, all this upper part. And you have the plan of Carnes here. After a building archaeology reading on this facade, I recognized only 2 parts conserved from the original monuments. One at the south of the entrance of the central chamber, so here. And the other over the cover slab, the capstone at the entrance of the southern chamber, just this part. So you can see here. The literature doesn't mention precisely the importance and the localization of the restorations. So the present image of Carnes is this facade, which is in part the personal view of Pierre Rolangio. We can no access to the original monument. We can't no access to the original monument by the facings, and unfortunately, most of the excavation of Caen, most of the excavation archives of Caen disappeared. The view of Gio is a building with two faces. The first with the two chambers as a source, donc the first face here, and the northern chamber has been built afterwards. We can see the faces proposed by Gio on the facade restored. There isn't any alignment or covering by a long tumulus in the Gio view. Without final answer, we can ask ourselves about this view according to the original parts. We'll not take the upper parts in consideration. For instance, why the original part at the left side of the rotunda couldn't have the same height at the right side here. Gio found it and restored it at 40 centimeters high. The restoration has been directly done after the excavation, and thanks to two documents and the literature, we know that the right side has been found and restored 1 year before the left side. And this document, this plan. If we see the monuments in three phases for each chamber, one faces first, and the two chambers adds to the central rotunda. If we see the monument in three phases for each chamber, with a circular cairn as a primary phase, the two sides can be viewed like an alignment of the facade for a final phase. This is possible. Wall could cover all the previous walls and thus make the faces disappear in a long monument, like this. Only new excavation in the cairn, in the part not explored, could give an answer to that question. And all isn't excavated here. We have to understand the image given by a restored monument to know the point of view of the archaeologist. Thanks to archive and building archaeology methodology, we can give back to a monument its original appearance, not obligatory with new restoration, but it's possible with the 3D models. The studies of the Britain monuments are for the moment in progress, so I will present you here one which is actually complete. The cairn tree of the tumulus of Perret at Prissé-la-Charrière. I've worked on it during my second year of master. This monument is a rotunda that is included in a long tumulus, donc the cairn tree and the long tumulus. A rotunda is a small circular cairn which have been included in a long barrow or tumulus. The question about the cairn tree are if we can see the sequences, faces, and the mode of construction for the moment, if they can be recognized elsewhere, and if the rotunda is one previous or is included in the architectural project of the long tumulus, all thanks to the building archaeology methodology. The first step was to do a new drawing of the external wall, whereas in the inside, the 3D was enough. Like you have the recording here, and the 3D model done by Perazio. After, you have to do the reading of the facings to recognize these sections, the sections. They give us the sequences of the construction, but also other information, such mistake during Neolithic construction, natural or voluntary destruction, or present point of weakness in the walls for future restoration. And anchoring, for example, anchoring holes which have never been seen before in megaliths. An outline of the construction can be proposed. The first stage was to prepare the base of the cairn. They remove the vegetal soil to the substratum for the passage and the chamber. And they remove to a layer of soil for the rest of the cairn, for the mass of the cairn. This marks on the ground the future plan of the monument. The layer also permits to absorb the movement of the monument after the construction. And you have a profile of this here, with the passage here. The second sequence consists in the construction of the first section in the entire monument. This began with the internal parts, the walls of the chamber first, then the passage with the northern facade. It's the same construction. After, the cairn has been built around the chamber to 1 meter high. The external facing has visible running joints that you can see here. This one, it's here, which corresponds at a mistake of construction or at a corner. Here, the regularity at every 2.5 meters favors the second choice. This seems to delimit portion in the cairn. We can count 7 portions, and maybe there are 3 others in the not excavated zone. These portions give a polygonal form to the base of the cairn. The facing reading permit to see partly the mode of construction without destruction. The construction of the chamber entirely in dry stone is interesting, more particularly the corners. There isn't masonry reinforcement at the corners. I don't know if you understand me. The masonry reinforcement, it's like Eric Gomez showed before. It's the stone are mixed, imbricate. In chamber of pre-say of the country, one wall leans on one other. One wall leans on one other. You have this, and not this. It works like the slabs, and that you can see with the central chamber of the box B, and the slabs leans on another. They didn't change the techniques between slabs and dry stone walling. Even at the Boixby, the adjacent chamber here mix slabs and dry stone with the same technique too. Furthermore, it gives us a relative dating for each wall. Of course, it works only for rectangular base of chamber. Then, during the third sequence, they built the second section of the passage, that is the corbelling here, always with the facade. Put down the capstones afterward to consolidate the corbellings. After the second and third section of this chamber is done, the third, in green, corresponds at the end of the chamber. It has got a particularity. It transforms the rectangular chamber to polygonal. The stones cut the angles to offer a better support for the capstone. This looks like the architectural technique of the skin cheese. Historical architectural technique. The internal parts rise beyond the rest of the cairn. At the end of the sequence, the cover slabs are put on certainly from the south part of the cairn. The second section of the external facing is made around the cover slabs, as you can see in the profile. If you see before, here it rises beyond the rest of the cairn, and after you have the same eye everywhere. There was a kind of platform at the top of the monument, like this. This section gives a circular form to the cairn. This is the end of the base of the monument, like a drum for a cupola. Then, the wall monument is curved by the third section of the external wall. This section, of 40 centimeters thick, is fascinating because it corresponds at an architectural gesture. This section is located at the interface between the base of the monument and the dome. It is composed by long stone, very thin, and all broken. We can interpret this section as a desire from the builders to allow it to absorb the movement of the dome after the construction. Thus, the dome moved and has been wedged by the section. And you can see all the stones broken. And the profile is, I haven't the word, to go under the capstones. With the soil layer from the beginning, which plays the same role, they guarantee a longevity to the monument. This said gesture shows a big knowledge of construction from the builders. The dome must have been built with a bombshell form, like this, or carinated form, with the height between 4 or 5 meters, but it's just a supposition. Afterward, the dome has been destroyed during the architectural project of the long tumulus that Luc said before. The cairn 3 takes part as the family of the rotundae included in a long tumulus. The principal question for these monuments is to know if the construction of the rotunda was included in the architectural project of the long tumulus, or if it was present before it. For the Cairn 3, some clues give us an idea of the chronology of the long tumulus. The entrance section of the external wall and the passage are built in the same time to give a coherence between them. Furthermore, we have on the external facing an heterogeneous profile of the wall. At the entrance, the profile is vertical, and at the opposite side, it has got a barter more important. The barter, it's the profile. Vertical and with a barter. Okay, sorry. The dome had to be off-centered toward the entrance. This shows a desire to highlight and to make visible the entrance. It's against the idea to cover and hide the cairn immediately after the construction. The dome has been taken off for the construction of the long tumulus, and the rest have been put around the cairn. While build something with developed architectural gesture to destroy it immediately. The second point is that it exists a stone yam here in the southern part of the external wall. In the life of a dry stone construction, falling rocks is a current problem. This happened often a long time after the construction and compulsory in an empty environment. A relative dating can be done to the restoration of this stone yam. The west wall of the alveolus A6, this wall, which belongs to the long tumulus, leans on the external wall of the Cairn 3. More particularly, the section that covers the section which covers the stone yam, this section that you can see here. So the restoration is either contemporary or previous to the construction of the alveolus, so of the long tumulus. This element plead for rotunda made as an independent architectural project realized before the one of the long tumulus. Then the rotunda was built a lapse of time before the long tumulus and without mound. With the restoration made on the northern part, the access to the Cairn 3 had to come from the north. And now I will talk about 3D models. A new dynamic begins to use the 3D files like a walk tool, thanks to the technique of the numeric photogrammetry. It is to take pictures of an object or a monument in different positions and from different angles. After, you put the pictures in the software that identifies the corresponding points in the pictures, and with this, it can locate the position of each camera during the shooting. In the 3 dimension, and then in 3 dimension, and then it gives a point cloud. With, for this example, with 1 hour of shooting, 30 for the facade, and 4 hours of computer processing, you can have, if your computer is accommodating, a point cloud of the facade of Cairn. This one. the biggest difficulty is to take pictures that will be the most appropriate for the software algorithms. Often, the 3D is just to do a presentation to the public, but now we can use it like a work tool. Thus, making plan or section in the difficult spaces, like the chamber, is easy with a good camera and softwares. You can have a recording of facing few hours after the shooting and work on it. And this recording will be more precise than manual recording, which has taken 3 days of work. For the building archaeology applied to the historical monuments, 3D is often used. The archaeologist must imagine his construction in 3D. With software, you can delete some parts, build other, propose and test hypotheses of chronology, manipulate your building as you like. This helps a lot, especially when you have to manage a building archaeology study on a particularly big construction. Furthermore, these 3D files are a print of the monument as the date of the shooting. For example, the corbelling that you can see here of the central chamber of Caen will fall during the next 30 years. With a picture made on the site, a reconstitution in 3D is possible and give a state of it as the date of March 2012. At the Tumulus C, we can see the sequences and phases found by building archaeology at the scale of the monument. Taste the different phases, the different accesses to the building site, like ramps, scaffolding, etc. The insertion in the landscape is important. Furthermore, when the site is a necropolis, unfortunately, only few necropolis have been entirely excavated. Thanks to the topography that can be added to the 3D files, we can see the view of the building from all the angles at each phase. If the construction knowledge has been understood, that can help to apprehend the approaches to the monument, for example. Of course, it also could be used as a great tool for the public when the sites have not their internal parts accessible. I want to show you just some 3D models, and you have the facade of Caen here. The chamber here of Rennes, and you can have a section. You can have a section of the chamber in I. And this one is the chamber EMSG of Rennes. And you can see the corbelling here. This picture is only a point cloud. There isn't yet a texture on it. And you can make plan. If you take the base, you can put the point cloud on other software, and the software gives to you a plan directly of the chamber. And the central chamber of Caen, which will be fall in a quick time. So, as you can see, this work is still in progress. Megalithic building archaeology methodology can give us some elements rarely seen, like technique gestures, anchoring holes, chronology of construction and project, Neolithic mistakes from the builders, at contrary, an enormous architectural knowledge. Maybe the architectural knowledge of the country is present in other sites around it. This can show a hand of an architect project manager who works like the project manager during the Middle Age, moving at the search of a new command and who engage a local team of builders. With these elements and a lot of studies, it will be possible to do a new typology based on the technique gestures present in the monuments. This methodology has to be developed on the megalithic sites in Europe, even if the preserved height is not very important. With this view in 3D and the new point of interest, we can give a second life to the old excavated monuments. Thanks for your attention.